Well, it makes me wonder if people are being poisoned in some way, because when I look at the madness, like even the Middle East, that's a perfect example of insanity in motion. So I'm thinking to myself, are there something over there that's poisoning their minds, like poisoning them and making them psychotic, or are they just defective? I'm not kidding. I mean, you have to ask, is the water bad over there, or is there something going on that's creating this insanity?
Well, you have to go back, and it's no accident that that this original magic appeared in that part of the world. It appeared in Babylon and Samaria, and it's like this seems to be the birthplace of madness.
Right. Well, it's I would say jinn possession, but there's definitely something going on there where there is no connection to spirit. I don't care what they call themselves. I don't care how religious they say they are. These people are completely disconnected from spirit. Completely. If they had any connection whatsoever, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. So that's a no-brainer. But there's something going on there, and also you have to look at frequency. Now, frequency changes people's personality without a doubt. So maybe there's something getting scrambled that's causing more havoc. Now, it could be an esoteric thing. It could be an occult, some kind of a frequency or a gateway activating over there.
Well, Richard Hogan would always point out that look at the 19.5, look at the 33rd parallel, and that's where if you look at a tetrahedron, you take a tetrahedron, put a circle around it. The top of the flat top of the tetrahedron will slice that circle right at the 33rd parallel. So whatever the magic is, it seems to amplify it at that meridian. And I'm sure there's energy portals, and there's probably hyperdimensional portals there God knows what kind of insanity, their crazy magic ceremonies have opened up over there.
Well, it's interesting because I don't believe they can hold the vibration of pure light. So if there's something there that's very powerful and higher, hyperdimensional and very high in frequency, then that would explain if people were getting hit with that energetically, they wouldn't be able to handle it if they weren't evolved enough spiritually, which means they would be acting violent, which is what they're doing. So that makes sense right there.
Well, I live here. I'm probably the 32nd parallel. Phoenix is the 33rd.
Yeah.
And I used to like to go up to Sedona. I don't know if you've ever been to Sedona.
I'm supposed to go there because according to my astrological chart, it's one of the best places for me. So. Okay.
It'd be interesting to see how you respond to it. But I've always wanted to live in Sedona, but for some reason I've never wound up there. But I've known people that have moved to Sedona from other parts of the country, and they always tell you that, well, the energies in Sedona are so much more intense that if you live in Poughkeepsie and you're a little bit crazy, if you move to Sedona, you'll be a lot crazy. So it's like where you live, the energies of wherever it is you live will have a profound effect on your psyche.
Right, yeah.
So I'm thinking, and my God, it's like, what is it about the Middle East? What is it about Israel? What is that, the energy that's there that
right,
societies have been obsessed with?
Power.
Ever since the beginning of the human race. What is it in that area that makes people crazy?
That's what I'm wondering. Yeah, well, they have to be calibrated for the vibrational frequency and signature. I mean, Sedona, for example. I mean, if people are aligned and their chakra systems and their exotonal lines are all aligned accordingly, then they'll be able to download higher frequencies, which of course is a light language, without getting too esoteric on everybody. But literally, I mean, it's not a big deal once you learn how to calibrate and allow more higher consciousness energies to descend into the body and alter the DNA through light consciousness. But that's another story, and that's another episode altogether. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of limitation over there. I mean, from what I've observed is that there's a lot of programming based on false belief systems, based on these man-made gods that have been wreaking havoc. I mean, for century after century, it never gets any better because they haven't changed or evolved or grown spiritually. And until they stop taking each other out and murdering each other and cutting people's heads off, they're never going to ascend. They're never going to get it. That's not going to that's not going to solve anything. They could kill everybody on the planet. They'll still be unevolved and they'll still get wiped out. So
have you seen any footage of the military when they went into the museum in Iraq?
I don't think
during
so.
the Gulf War?
No.
Well, this is really interesting. I just came across this video by, I think he's an Australian filmmaker. He's called Chris Everard.
Mm-hmm.
And he did a piece on the Illuminati. But anyway, in this video, shows the American military just bashing their way through the walls there at the museum in Baghdad and stealing artifacts. Well, in this one chamber, there are what they call genie bottles. And they're these large ceramic or terracotta jars that they're kind of pointed on the top, and they're called genie bottles. And they said, and these were some of the things, the artifacts that were being removed from the museum by the United States Army.
Interesting.
Well,
can I have one?
They said, don't break the genie bottles. Don't open them up.
Oh, come on.
Because they contain evil spirits.
Okay. According to who, though? Where does that data come from?
Well, according to, it's explained in the video.
Okay. I'll have to check it out. Yeah.
It's
well, for me.
They said that this goes back to the alchemy of King Solomon, that these genie bottles were actually, had been taken from the temple in, Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. That King Solomon was lord of all the jinn, all the genies. That he was the master over these demonic entities. And another thing that they did, you know about fetishes and so forth that contain energy and so forth. Well, they said they took shards of the broken pottery and stuff from the museum in Baghdad, brought it to the United States, and just scattered it, over the countryside. I said, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would they do that stupid? And I think, well, wait. What if there's evil entities or negative entities that are attached to these pottery fragments, and that they're spreading those out across the United States?
That's interesting. Well, what if they weren't necessarily evil to begin with? Maybe they were trapped and got ticked off, and maybe they were perceived as evil. Maybe they're not evil at all. Some of those genies.
Well,
see, I would have opened one of the bottles, obviously.
According to the Kabbalah, there's echelons of demonic entities, just like there's echelons of angelic entities. And what King Solomon was the master of, he learned how to, using the Kabbalah, he learned how to become the master of these evil entities.
Right, yeah, command them, yeah.
Okay? And, that was...
Well, that's what Crowley was doing too, wasn't he?
That was one of King Solomon's claim to fame, that he was... That these, in fact, the legend is that these evil entities actually helped him build the temple, the great temple in Jerusalem.
And what happened to these entities?
I'm watching this and I said, "Geez, this sounds like GhostBusters." This sounds like we keep the evil spirits in a containment.
Frequency fence.
Okay.
Okay.
And it's and this is the other thing about GhostBusters. If you recall the movie, they were doing, it was this apartment on Central Park West. A Central Park West apartment was a portal to another dimension, thanks to the evil ritual workings of some mad occultist. You remember that in the movie Ghostbusters?
Vaguely. It's been a while since I've seen it.
Sigourney Weaver lived in this apartment on Central Park West, and she had there was a portal in her apartment that was access to this other hyperdimension.
Okay.
All the evil spirits. Well, it just so happens that in 1918, Aleister Crowley had an apartment in Central Park West where he was doing these kind of rituals. So it's like it becomes comic after a point. It says, oh, my God. So that's where Ghostbusters got the idea, for their haunted apartment in New York City.
Well, didn't Dan Aykroyd write that?
Yeah.
Okay.
He co-authored that.
Well, he was into the paranormal, too, right?
Huh?
He's into the paranormal and UFOs.
Oh, yeah, he's totally into the occult. And I think so is Harold Ramis, who just died recently. And he was, I think they wrote it together.
Right. Yeah, that sounds right.
So it's like, well, they weren't just picking this out of the ethers. They had done some research, apparently, about Aleister Crowley and his ritual workings in New York City.
That's really interesting.
And Aleister Crowley also did magical workings from a home he owned on the banks of Loch Ness.
Oh, that's interesting.
So is the Loch Ness Monster one of his creations?
Well...
it just gets, the more you dig into this, the crazier it gets.
The funny thing is I think people give him a lot more power than he had on a psychic level, on an esoteric level. I think he had an influence, no doubt, and I think he did some things that were very controversial because of back then and that timeline he was on. But you talk to people like who are into the craft these days and rituals, they're not that impressed with him, So I don't know. I don't know what to say about him. It's possible he did some strange things and opened up some very, very bizarro gateways, but I've never seen a dimensional portal that can't be sealed, on an esoteric level. So if there's a rip in the fabric, look at the atomics blasting. You're talking about things like that can actually make a huge wave and rift into our dimensional space.
That was allegedly also an alchemical working that was engineered with the occult interest of Robert Oppenheimer. That was an occult ritual magic working to master control of materia prima itself.
Well, you're tearing a fabric. Yes. Literally. And so you're going to open up something. There's going to be a parallel bleed-through effect. There's no doubt about it. That's just science 101.
Well, apparently he knew that. Apparently there was more to the Trinity test than people talk about, but that it was a deliberate alchemical occult experiment.
Right. So what do you think they were trying to bring in? Okay, so say they're trying to do this, open up these gateways, create a rift or a rip in the fabric. Well, what do you think they were trying to establish? Who do you think they're trying to contact? Positive beings or some that aren't so positive?
No, it's all about control and power.
So they're basically wanting to harness more and more.
Well, frankly, if you listen to, there's recordings of Oppenheimer's comments after the test, where he tells the story of Krishna. Right,
I heard that one. Yeah.
Who was explaining to the Prince Arjuna that this is your responsibility, that sometimes you have to follow through on your responsibilities, even though they may seem repugnant to you. And he said, and then that's when Krishna said, no. Then he revealed himself to Arjuna, and he says, he showed the multi-armed God Krishna, who said, now I'm become death, the destroyer of worlds. So, was Krishna the evil entity that Oppenheimer was trying to bring through the portal?
Well, or was it just that they were so brainwashed by their programming that, people misperceive information a lot, and they start getting into mysticism and mythology, and they don't understand what they're dealing with, and of course, who knows? They could have been assessing it wrong to begin with, but, well, whatever they did, it didn't help much, did it?
You don't know, how, these the atomic bomb was developed by a cabal of Jewish physicists, and you don't know how deeply they were involved in the Jewish Kabbalah in trying to manipulate the quantum field with their bomb project. And it's like they're toying with the primal forces of creation here.
Mm-hmm.